So in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about why downsizing your flipping bait can make a huge difference in the amount of fish that you put into the boat. Now, a lot of you guys, just like me, I love to go flipping. And it's one of those techniques that for a lot of us, we think, oh, flipping is like a warmer water technique. But it's something that I actually have tied on even when the water temperatures get colder, and you just got to make little slight adjustments to put more fish into the boat. So let me tell you guys a story. A few years ago, I was fishing down a bank, and I had been fishing a Berkeley Fritz side flat-sided crankbait. It was the big in size. I'd been put a lot of fish into the boat, and I was throwing it when the wind was blowing, and then the wind quit blowing. It kind of slicked off, kind of got that kind of post-front deal. It was, stormy in the morning, not in the afternoon kind of deal. You guys have been there, done that. And as that wind started to slick off, that blue bird sky started to come out, those fish started to not want to eat that crankbait nearly as much, if not at all. And so I got to thinking, like, what can I effectively fish from that 2 to 5 foot depth range around a bunch of wood structure and a bunch of docks? And I thought, well, a flipping bait. But then I thought to myself, Alex, water is 42 degrees. They're not going to bite a flipping bait. And so I got it out anyway, just to see, just to throw it and see if I could get some bites. And what I noticed is I would flip in on wood cover and on these boat dock posts. And as I was reeling it in, a lot of fish would follow it up and then just swim right off. So they were wanting the bait. The bait was getting their attention, but they just weren't eating it as well as I thought they should. And I wasn't putting fish into the boat. And so I had to make an adjustment. And so what I did was I sat down and I tied on a smaller hook and a smaller bait, and I started flipping that. I didn't even adjust my weight size. I flip a 1/2 ounce most of the time, just that fast fall, that kind of reactionary style, still flipping it on fluorocarbon, still flipping it peg. But what I did was I put on a 3/0 hook, and I dropped down from a 4-inch pit boss like this one down to a little bitty 3-inch pit boss like that one, and started putting those fish into the boat. I actually went back through the same exact area where a lot of those fish were following and started getting bites. Now, the reason for this and why I think it works really, really well in the winter is a few reasons. One reason is that, when you think about a bass is a cold water creature. They're a cold-blooded creature as well. And so cold water is going to affect their metabolism. It's going to affect their mood. Just like when we're cold, we don't really want to do anything. We kind of want to bundle up. We just kind of want to sit, and we want the food to come to us. We don't really want to go looking for the food. The bass is the same exact way. And so when it gets colder, that bigger bait profile just looks like a lot more work for those fish, and it looks like a lot more energy they have to expend for a meal, and they'll actually start focusing in on smaller things to eat and things that are more worth their time. And so as that metabolism drops, those fish's willingness to eat things drop as well. And when we're not throwing something like a crankbait and getting them to react to it, we got to trick them to eat. And so throwing that little bit smaller bait helps to trick those fish into eating. Another thing that I was dealing with was a little bit clearer water. We all know that as the water temperatures drop, the water starts to clear up quite a bit throughout the winter. And I just think that bigger profile of that bait was a little bit more intrusive. It was something that those fish may have, like I said, it's getting their attention and they definitely want to try to eat it, but is it worth eating for them? And so that bigger profile was not, where the smaller profile definitely was. And then the third thing, and this is really fascinating because after the fact, I went and looked this up. This is a little bit of science for you guys. In colder water, pressure changes and things in the water actually translate a lot better to a fish's lateral line. And so what that means is as that water gets colder, as that siltation starts to drop, and the reason it gets cleaner is because siltation and algae blooms and different, small little microorganisms, those blooms and those spawns and those kind of things, they drop with the water temperature. And so that water clears up, and a lot of that kind of interference that can be in that water for a fish is not there. And so that lateral line gets amplified because the water's clearer, and it's easier for those kind of like hydrosonic signatures and those water displacements and water movements to be translated to those fish's lateral line. And so you got to imagine this bait with these big kicking appendages versus this bait is going to have a lot more water displacement, and then in turn it's going to hit that fish's lateral line a lot more. And so I think just from a scientific standpoint and kind of thinking about it logically and wanting to add a reasoning as to why this thing works the way that it does in colder water, I think it's simply due to the fact that those fish aren't getting as much pressure put on to that lateral line. And so to them, they're kind of interpreting it in their little brains as that's a smaller easier thing for me to kill. It's not as much, like it's not, you know, kind of intruding into my space as much, and it makes them just a little bit more willing to eat it. And so, yeah, guys, I mean, if you're flipping and you like to flip as much as I do, don't put the flipping stick away in the winter. Just downsize your baits. And if you want to check these baits out, I'll make sure and link them down in the description so you guys can see them. And if you want to see this in action, click this video that's popping up right here.